Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I am Jody Grunwald. This week, my guest is Colleen Verriest, MSW, LCSW, founder, owner of Whole Heart Healing, LLC. Colleen held progressive leadership positions in the nonprofit sector until she decided to transition out of her CEO role to return to her center and be more present in her life in a new and powerful way. After a loss that shook Colleen's world, the thought of "you don't get a do-over" kept coming up for her. So she listened to that voice and is now working in private practice and focusing in on the things that matter most. During this interview, we talk about setting boundaries, vulnerability, imposter syndrome, gratitude, power of connection, finding your path, giving yourself permission, and so much more. Colleen shares what matters most to her besides her amazing family is leading with heart, intention, and a good dose of vulnerability. This was such a real conversation about stepping into your power and listening in to what is truly calling you. On March 24th, Today is the Day is launching the inaugural International Changemakers Forum titled Challenge Yourself, Disrupt the Status Quo. Learn more about how you can connect with incredible everyday changemakers, CNN heroes, authors, TEDx speakers, entrepreneurs, and more. To purchase tickets and to learn more, go to todayisthedayliveit.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Today is the Day Changemakers YouTube channel, stream this podcast on all streaming sites, comment, like, and share, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. The views expressed by all Today is the Day Changemakers podcast guests are their own. Their appearance on the Today is the Day Changemakers podcast does not imply any endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald, and every single week I get to interview the most incredible people, the inspirers, the changemakers, those who are just saying no to the status quo and busting through. And today I have Colleen Verriest with me. Hi, Colleen. How are you?
Hi. Good morning. Welcome.
Oh, yes. Welcome is right. I'm so happy we are finally having this conversation. So thank you for joining me today.
Me too. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Jody. I'm really excited about having this conversation.
Me too. I know there's so many gems of information that you're going to be able to share with us today, but I'm excited to get to know you. I know I'm going to get to know you even better than I do. And we met through a whole other life that I'll mention. But first, I want to just talk about who you are, your background, what's written in your bio. I always say this is the one time I read from the page, because these words are so important. It took a lot to get to these words on a page, I always say. So Colleen Verriest, MSW, LCSW, important that we use those your name there. Colleen has been nurturing change in individuals and organizations for nearly 20 years as a licensed clinical social worker and nonprofit leader. She began her career in 2003 after graduating from New York University with a master's degree in social work. Soon after, she launched her own private practice, providing individual and family therapy for 10 years. Eager to take on new challenges, Colleen assumed several progressive leadership positions in the nonprofit sector, starting as clinical director, moving on to vice president role, and finally to a chief executive officer. Colleen was moved to pay close attention to her life and purpose in a way at the end of 2020. Suddenly and unexpectedly, she lost her precious mother, who had been an incredibly huge part of her and her family's life. This loss shook Colleen's world. What kept bubbling up for her was the thought, you don't get a do-over. With that and the support of her fiance, Colleen made a decision to transition out of her demanding CEO position. Making this heart-centered decision allowed her to return to her center and be present again in her life in a new and powerful way. Colleen most recently began practicing again as a founder and owner of Whole Heart Healing, LLC in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Colleen, I'm getting chills reading that. I know that I could see it in your face as well. And I really have to say this. I want to give you so much credit. That is such a heart-centered bio. And people the permission to put in their bio what created that change, right, why it was so important. And it also helps people to validate that when you're going through something like what you went through, I know what it's like to lose a parent. You need it is an eye-opening experience that changes your entire world.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. I've always led from a place of vulnerability, and that has been a big part of how I've made decisions. It's not always comfortable, but sometimes you have to really, I find when I tune into that place, the decisions I need to make are clear. The actions and the steps to get there aren't always easy, right? But when I tune in, I am usually really clear about what it is I need to do. I think, I was in a position where I could make that decision, and I don't take that for granted. I knew that it was time for a change. This was grief is a funny thing. It's one of those things that as a clinician, I thought I had a really intimate understanding of grief. But after experiencing this type of loss, I realized that there was a whole another layer and depth that I had not experienced around this. And my hope and, my vision is that it makes me a better clinician so that I can help others go there in a supported way with empathy and compassion. It's taking that pause, taking a break, making that decision to leave. Again, we go back to these things that define who we are. And my career has been a big part of my life, obviously. So stepping away, calls into question all of these things around purpose, and why am I here? But it's not about the job. It's, for me, it became about realizing that, and I knew this before, and my mom lived this way. She knew that every moment, looking out the window, seeing a bird with my son or my nephews, or, taking a walk, that those moments are like, that's what really matters. So being able to be more present and be more accessible for my son, and knowing that I wanted to shift my career and my focus a little bit, having that opportunity was such a gift. And it was that last part of 2021 was probably some of the most important months of my life, probably for, I would say from a healing standpoint, for me to really address grief in a way that I wasn't on the hamster wheel and putting out fires and getting out of, meetings and laundry and all this other stuff. I was able to kind of really be present with that for a while, and it helped tremendously. So
I find that we honor those we lost in interesting ways. And what keeps coming to me as you were talking was by you giving yourself the permission to take that time to validate yourself and then give yourself that space and say, this is no longer me. You've honored your mom's legacy of the bird and the walks. And it's just like those lessons you don't even realize by what you did. And you may have realized it. I'm just saying from the outside here looking, I see that would be something, I don't even know her, that she probably would have so wanted you to do. And you did that in honor of her. And I just think that's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think she'd be really, I talk to her all the time. I consult with her on a regular basis.
I do that with my dad. So I know it works. I know it works.
So these decisions were ones that I looked to her for her guidance, and was a huge influence on my career and who I am obviously as a person, but as a professional. And, I would go to her on a regular basis for guidance. And I knew at the core that she would be very, very happy. She was very happy when at one point I only had 2 jobs instead of 3. And then when I only had 1, she was really, I'm just so glad. I found a card from her that said, I'm just so happy you only have 1 job now. So she would be pleased. And I've gotten different validation from her in this process, messages along the way that I'm where I need to be, which is a comfort and solace for me.
Absolutely. And if you're open to those messages, they come. It might not come in the way that you're expecting. They're not going to just show up as a ghost form and start talking. It's other ways. But you did bring up an important point that I want to mention, and that is, you said that you had the opportunity to make the change that you were able to make because of the position you were in. What advice would you have someone who may not have that same opportunity, but is feeling that heaviness, that burden, that the 80 hours and all of that, and they've got this grief potentially, or other things that are going on, challenges in their life? What advice do you have for that?
For me, what's always worked for me, and I don't know that this works for everyone, but I feel like chipping away at something in little pieces helps. I don't think, well, sometimes you overhaul the whole thing and you make a huge change and it's a risk. Sometimes I find when you're in a situation, and when I've been in situations and that, it's like you have to do what you have to do. You don't always have the ability to just, snap your fingers and things are different. I find small intentional changes in how you're managing your work-life balance, small, I'm not saying huge things, that becomes contagious. So if I'll give an example, if work is a place of stress, or just you're not being filled up or satisfied, or, that's really important for me, feeling filled up. And the checking the email 24 hours a day becomes, a problem. If you begin by saying, after this time, I'm committing to not checking email till from, 6 p.m. till 9 in the morning, or whatever that start time is. At first, it's really, really very uncomfortable. I think it causes a lot of anxiety. I've been there, it creates a lot of anxiety. Like, oh my gosh, because it's building up in your head. Like, what am I going to be dealing with in the morning? But once you do that and become sort of your new routine, and then you realize after a week, 2 weeks, that nothing catastrophic happens by not checking that email in that job that you're not too happy in anyway. And it also can make other people uncomfortable that you're not like, at the ready, but that's okay. Discomfort's not a bad thing. Then it gives them permission to do the same thing. And it becomes sort of a wave. And, if when you take a day off, you aren't available and you're not available to your team and you say, I'm really not available. And that may make them uncomfortable or be like, hey, why can't I get in touch with you? Well, you give them permission to take that day off and fully take that day off. These are like small things, but I think they're very intentional. And I believe right now, because of the world we live in and work in, that we're always available, especially when work has moved to home. People think if they get a text, you need to respond within seconds. But in reality, I think if it's not urgent, waiting a day lets people pause. And, if it doesn't need to be responded, I just think that we have that. Those are the kind of things, small things, when you're in a place where, because then while you can't make that leap right away, what is not pleasant about your job, you're sort of mitigating some of that in your personal life, and it becomes less consuming. It's less of a negative influence if you're carving out some time for yourself, disconnecting from that place. And in that personal time, you get more creative and you may start connecting with other ideas about where you really want to be, So if you're just sucked in and constantly available to this place where you're unhappy, then you have no time or space to explore other opportunities and other places or jobs or classes or, people that you want to connect with and explore, really. I feel like it frees you up. Once you say, you know what, everything's cool. I didn't answer that email and nothing happened. I waited a day. It's okay. It does make people uncomfortable. And that's what I think we have to prepare. You as an individual have to prepare for having those personal boundaries, and making that a priority, I think, is really key. But it can feel really risky, like the fear of missing out, the fear of not, being able to like jump on an opportunity that, hey, if I didn't reply within this time frame, they're not going to come back to me. They're not going to want me. I think we got to work through that piece, because I don't think is that really based in truth, or is that based in fear? And one of the things I think the pandemic has allowed in some industries, not in all industries, is that taking a pause is a little bit more the norm now, is sort of integrating itself, and to some business worlds, not all. I know friends and colleagues and loved ones who are in areas where you get no downtime. And so that's a little bit, that's a challenge, but I think those small intentional changes are really critical, taking that risk, and actually it's like dipping your toe in the water, and how does this feel to you, first.
I agree. I feel like, I think a lot of the world has what I'm calling, and I don't think I'm the only one calling it Zoomitis.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, right, for those of us who used to go out into the field, you'd make an appointment, and then your next appointment, you had to have enough drive time to get appointment to the next. So you had a built-in time, at least, to listen to the radio, to kind of think. But
decompress.
Yeah. Now you're clicking end meeting, start meeting, or end meeting, join meeting, and your feet haven't even touched the ground for 12 hours so I'm like, we all have Zoomitis. So I agree with you, that pause is included in your day. So to me, right, if it would have taken you a half hour in between, you should have leave yourself that time, get up, go get a drink, get off the chair, because if you don't, the burnout, and like you said, if you're not happy, you're only really dragging yourself even further in. So even a half hour in between appointments, nobody's going to, if you say, no, I can't make it at that time, because you'll find another time in another day.
That's it. Yes, that will happen.
On March 24th, today is the day is launching the inaugural Challenge Yourself, Disrupt the Status Quo International Virtual Changemakers Forum. This unprecedented event provides attendees with the opportunity to personally connect with fellow everyday changemakers, CNN heroes, TEDx speakers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, authors, and more. The event's keynote speaker is known as the Global Ambassador for Changemakers, Henry DeCio Jr. Your ticket purchase matters, as 20% of the proceeds will go to the Applaud Our Kids Foundation. Thank you to Investors Bank, Catalyst for Change sponsor, Create Change, Disrupt the Status Quo, Ignite Your Spark breakout session sponsor, Pam 10. Scholarship sponsor, New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Special mention to all the Inspire Change sponsors. Go to todayistheday.liveit.com.
So I want to go back a little bit. I know I normally do, but we got started in a different place, and I just want to kind of go back, and I think we'll head back in this direction again.
Sure.
But I want to learn more about, you and I want the audience to learn more about you. And so let's just start a little bit where you grew up.
Okay.
And kind of what kind of child you were. I always ask this question because I love to hear and then see where everybody winds up years later, right? So,
it's interesting. It's a great question. What kind of child were you? So I grew up, I was born in Newark, and then my parents moved to Toms River. It was like this great migration, I think, to the Jersey Shore, and I grew up in Toms River, and my mom, when she passed away, was the house I grew up in. So it was the only house I really knew. And my childhood was, at the time, I was one of a few kids who had parents who divorced. I was about 5 or 6 years old when my parents divorced. It wasn't as common then, and so as a child, I was precocious, I would say, very attuned to the emotions of the people around me. Growing up I have a younger sister, we're 2.5 years apart. And then my mom and I'm the oldest. And, I'm a caretaker, and I was, very attuned to my mom's need, wanting to make it as easy as possible for her at times, and my dad was a part of our life, thankfully, too. And then in 2nd grade, he was in a really bad car accident. My parents were divorced, and he was hit by a drunk driver. And so that really changed a lot within the family, only because, my dad was really badly injured, and it changed the trajectory of his career and things like that. And certainly, what I remember is feeling just a lot of anxiety. Like, if that happened to my dad, is this going to happen to my mom? Working through a lot of, your parents get divorced, and then there's this really tragic accident that made like the front page of the Asbury Park Press, so that was a big part of the younger years, elementary years, the early part of it. And then my mom always had this incredible insight that, made therapy available to us. She knew that there was stuff that we need, if that we needed to work it out, that she gave us the opportunity to do it at a pretty early age. And so I was exposed to, psychotherapy, counseling, whatever, and I enjoyed it. And I went, it wasn't a constant, but it was something that my mom would say, if you feel like you needed to talk to somebody, it's always there, and I don't know that I knew then that's what I wanted to do, but I knew that whatever was going on there, I wanted to be a part of, later on in life. So I think as a child, I saw a lot of unique family experiences that at the time, I don't know that I realized other families were having, and then as you grow, you have a certain perception that one person's family is perfect, or they have everything, and then you learn that you weren't alone. And I think that that's an important piece that as I got older, I realized I wasn't alone, and I wasn't the minority anymore with like having divorced parents, because that became more and more pervasive, but not when it happened to my family. It was a little bit painful, from a peer standpoint, and certainly painful from a family standpoint. But, knowing that we had the support, the unconditional love, and that we were going to figure it out, we worked through it. You work through it. That was always the mantra, my mom's mantra. No matter what it is, we're going to get through it, and that's been a driving force, from the beginning.
Wow. Yeah. I can understand then, how your concepts and what you're sharing and what you put on your, your bio and everything about getting through it and knowing what you have to do in order to get through it. Right. Mm-hmm. So that, and listening to that, I think that I was also early in probably early 80s, I don't even know if it was mid, my parents got divorced.
Okay.
Definitely one of the very few in the world.
Yeah.
And I know that feeling of what you're saying. It's like almost like that thing you don't want to tell people.
Yeah.
How it felt for me back then. So
yes.
I understand that piece a little bit too, as well. But also the fact that your mom was so open to therapy is wonderful and interesting, because not all parents back in, now people talk more about it way more openly than even, 15, 20 years ago. So it's wonderful that they were so open, your mom was therapy. And I'm so sorry to hear about your dad and this terrible accident.
Yeah. I mean, he survived, but he was forever, changed by it. And certainly we were too. And he lost his girlfriend at the time. She was killed instantly. He had, started a relationship, and, we knew her, but when you look back, I mean, you were young and you really didn't understand the whole concept. And then, when I think about it now, I look at it differently, but yeah. And I mean, he went through a ton, and we had to watch it. And, that whole thing of watching, vicarious trauma, it's, yeah, but, the human spirit and, the things, it really is about the support and the unconditional love in the process. That's so critical. I taught my son that concept very early on. I wanted him to understand, he's 6, what unconditional love is. And that no matter what, you're going to make a lot of mistakes along this journey, but no matter what, we're here. So, you're not mad at me. Well, I might be frustrated with you, but I still love you, no matter what, so I was saying, what kind of love is that, and he'll know, he knows.
That's a really important concept. One that's big in my family.
Yeah.
Huge in my family.
Yeah.
Not often talked about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a lot of people's lives, there's a lot of conditional. You mess and you hurt me, I'm out. Now you can't do it consistently, right? Because we understand that at some point it becomes abusive. But the unconditional love piece of feeling sorry when you make a mistake, and as a mom to be able, or sibling, or whatever it is, to be able to say I love you no matter what, up to, of course, certain other things.
Yeah. But loving someone doesn't mean that if it's a destructive dynamic or relationship that the person needs to be in your proximity, so you can love someone unconditionally no matter what, and also create boundaries in your life.
Yes, that is correct. That is what I wanted to share, because unfortunately, you and I both know that in abusive life cycles, in certain situations, I'm always careful, because I always want to make sure that I say, yes, unconditional love works, and it's so important and valid, but you can still love someone but not be in their life, if
That's right,
to the other side. So I always like to balance both sides on the podcast. It's important.
Yeah, and sometimes that boundary is actually the most loving thing you can do for yourself and the person. Like having those boundaries is actually a very loving action and step to take. It's not always pleasant, or it doesn't feel good, and there's a lot involved, and it's not that easy. But when you can do it, I believe that it's a very loving gesture at the core. It's self-love and love for the other, that this is what's best.
And you're teaching about self-love when you do that too, and like you said, you're setting that example of self, which is very, very important. So your childhood sounds like it definitely had its traumatic moments, but I'm sure it had also,
oh my gosh,
loving and incredible moments as well. And so I want to ask you, is there anything that you can remember that kind of stands out that influenced you to the person that you are today? And it sounds like there's so many, but is there something that you can think of that happened that influenced you to become a therapist, that influenced you in your unconditional love in any of those aspects of your life?
Well, I think as I became an adolescent, I revisited therapy, and I remember just feeling like this worked, and feeling that it was very healing.
Right.
And then I just decided, I think I want to be a part of this process and help others. And that at the time I didn't understand, really like what that meant, what kind of education I would need. I just knew that I wanted to do something like that. For a hot minute, I also wanted to be a lawyer, and had an opportunity to do that with some financial support from a university. And I remember my dad was, well, why don't you go to law school? They're going to pay for most of it. And I was like, well, that's not really what I want to do. That would be a nice thing. I wouldn't have the debt, I'll be paying NYU off for the rest of my life. But it wasn't at the heart of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be part of a healing process. There's something that, and not because, there are some people who go into this work, let's be honest, who are doing it to heal themselves, which is sometimes very it's dangerous. I'm a big believer that you have to be on the other side of the room to really know. You have to have that needs to be a priority. That's how I feel. I was always did my own work. I've had my own therapist. I still have my own therapist, and I shouldn't be doing this to heal myself. There's always a reciprocity that happens in this work where you're learning and growing from it, but you're there for the other. You're there to provide service. This is a professional, relationship. So, I think the later adolescent years is when I really felt like this is what I want to do. I want to be a part of the healing process, and I wasn't quite sure. And then once I got into college, I explored the different degrees I could pursue in order to do what I thought I wanted to do. And then when I got to grad school, I was told and learned, it was very humbling, that being a good listener is not being a social worker. So you have to learn. This is actually a skill. You have to be trained, people think, oh, I'm a great listener, I can be a counselor. And I thought that too, I'm a good friend, people trust me, and there's a lot more to it, which I am happy I learned,
Right. So tell us a little bit about that, more to it. You know what I mean? Like you said it. I mean, a lot of people are good listeners. No, I shouldn't say it. Not everybody is. A lot of people like to talk. But for those who are our listeners, sometimes they are quote unquote like the counselor within the friendship. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the go-to person.
Right.
But what would you say would be some of the top skills that you think you have or a good counselor has when people, and I think this is a really important question, when people are looking the right counselor, what skills should they be paying attention to ensure that they're in the right place for themselves? What would you say that would be?
Well, for me, if I'm a picky, I'm very picky when I look for my therapist, you know, and then and I always say when someone connects with me, like, listen, I'm like kind of like a pair of shoes and you have to try it on and see if they fit. And if I'm not a good fit for you, that's fine. I don't take that personally. So I think, you know, one, it is fit, you know, like when you meet someone, does this feel comfortable? Does it feel right? The other thing is boundaries. You know, if a clinician does not have personal boundaries, you know, I would run, because, you know, I think that that's sort of a red flag to me. That's just my personal opinion. You know, you're not sharing, you know, you're not friending people on Facebook. You're not, you know, there has to be parameters for the relationship. I think also having, you know, training, having an educational background, understanding the credentials of the people, you know, people you're considering for this type of service, understanding like that you want a licensed provider on some level, PhD, that's also an option, but someone should have a license to do what they're doing, you know, if that's what the type of support they're seeking. And listening, you know, I've had colleagues, friends who said, you know, I went to a session with somebody and they really talked a lot about themselves, you know, during the session. And that would not be something I would find helpful if I'm there to do my own work. You know, of course, there's sharing that goes on because people are looking for guidance and support. So as a clinician, you are providing, but there should be for me, there's a ton of listening that happens. You know, I should be doing most of the listening and not most of the talking, unless, you know, necessity calls for me to be doing that based on what, you know, the client's bringing up. But I think, you know, listening, that feeling, that fit, personal boundaries, and having the expertise, you know, having the license, the credentials is really important.
I want to bring up something because I think this is important, and I've seen it happen in a personal situation that I think it would be for others to hear about, is that when you're in that clinic, you know, that situation, judgment. Now, and I bring this up because there's a difference between a counselor, therapist, giving you direction and helping you to figure out where to go. But what is your take on a therapist judging the client?
It's non-judgmental. It should be non-judgmental. I mean, that's at the core of social work, you know. You're in this interesting position as a clinician where you are being exposed to someone's innermost thoughts, feelings, you know, actions, and they may not be in accordance with your values. That's should have no bearing on how you approach it. And if it starts to become a problem as a clinician, you need to seek supervision. We have obligations. So, you know, if something becomes a problem and I'm triggered by somebody I'm working with because I just can't get with, like, it's killing me to hear this every day, then you've got to seek supervision. And then ultimately be able to say, if it's just not workable, I don't think I'm the best clinician for you because I'm not helping you. Right. Without saying, you know, I think this is absolutely crazy, you know, whatever you're thinking, you know, you know, you can have but you have to keep it really clear, and you owe them that space and respect to self-determine. That's how they feel. That's how a person, that you're not here to change their values, you're here to support them through that change. So yeah, it should be non-judgmental. The space should be non-judgmental.
And that's something I wanted to share, because I feel that is very important key. And if you feel like you're in that space, then it, like you said, it's like trying on a pair of shoes, not the right fit. Right.
No.
Right.
No.
That was important for me to just kind of.
Not in my opinion.
Well,
now,
I'm sorry.
A therapist, not in my opinion, a therapist who challenges you though,
Different.
Is different. That's part of the process, to be challenged and sort of look at things in a deeper, broader way is different than judging. So I think, making that distinction is really, really important.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, because I feel like listening, I want them to know that the support of a therapist is so important. But if they're making you feel bad about yourself because they're judging you, that's not the right fit. And sometimes people get stuck, and that's why. And it's like not everybody changes their bank account from a different bank from one bank because they get which is great. Yeah. The loyalty is there, but in this case, loyalty needs to be where it makes you feel good. And
that's right. Yeah.
Challenge is the growth. So you need to stick with where those are going to help you to grow.
Eli Manning, former New York Giants quarterback.
Leading a team, you learn pretty fast. You're only as good as the people who have your back. Lately, my goals are more focused on business, and having Investors Bank as my banking partner feels the same way. They have my back too. They're there for me with the resources and online tools I need for whatever success lies ahead. For what I do now and what I'll do next, I count on Investors Bank.
Visit investorsbank.com or stop by a branch. Member FDIC.
So you went to school, you became a clinical social worker, and where did you head after that? And congratulations and kudos to you for NYU.
Oh, thank you. I only applied to one school. I was really banking on getting in. So good thing.
Thank goodness.
Well, this better work. So right after grad school, I worked in Trenton, and that was really in the community. That was a very young social workers, man, the things you do, you look back and like, yeah, that I wouldn't do that again. And talk about my mom not wanting to hear about where I wouldn't tell her certain things because she would just not sleep at night. Some of the things that places you'd have to go and things you'd have to do. But at the time, I also wanted to do, as a social worker, you also work multiple jobs, which I've mentioned. So, you got to pay the bills, and then your student loans start coming in, you have to pay them. So I saw an ad for the community YMCA at the time, to do per diem work. So I started as a per diem therapist doing in-home counseling. And it was the beginning of what's now called the Children's System of Care in New Jersey. And I worked with the Y, then that began my 15-year career with the Y, which was really cool because I despite what was happening in my full-time job world, which I always had a full-time job, I went to St. Barnabas after working in Trenton, but always maintained my connection to the Y. Was tethered to the Y, and the work was good, and it helped pay the bills, and I liked the work, and I liked the in-home work. I never had done that before, and so it was unique. Being in people's homes is a whole nother layer of information, and it's also, you have to honor that because they've allowed you in their home. So it's very unique work, but and they still do it to this day. The Y is still doing that work. So that's really where I always had the full-time gig, and then the part-time gig, and then I opened my practice, in 2005 as well. So
that's the 3 jobs that your mom was talking.
Yeah. I had the Y, and then I became a director at the Y, and then within less than a year, I became the VP there. So that was, and when I became the VP, I backed off on some other things, but I did maintain my practice until my son was born. So, and it was at night, it was, I was blessed to have just a flourishing part-time practice, but, I knew once I had Declan that I just needed that time to care for him, and I just couldn't do it after work or on the weekends anymore. So, so that's really where, and then I was with the Y until 2019, early 2019. And then I shifted to Family and Children's Services of Monmouth County as the CEO until August of 2021. Yeah.
And that's when we met at the Y.
Yeah.
As I said in the opening, we'll mention that, we met at the Y. I was the director of development and came in, and I was there almost a year, I think, and then I started the foundation. So that it was a short stint, but yeah, it was great. It was great working together, and what a fabulous experience. And it's since changed its name and has grown, and it's doing fabulous things. But then, like you said, you moved on to Family Services, right?
Right, Family and Children's Services of Monmouth County. There's a couple of Family and Children's Services in New Jersey, but it's the one in Monmouth. Yeah.
There is. And so what kind of work did you do there? Because I don't know that everybody knows.
So that's where I was the CEO, and FCS had still has a myriad of services. They did a lot of work in the aging population. They had big services that support those through respite and home care, for those who are homebound or disabled or aging. Adult Protective Services was another huge program there that also was in Middlesex County, Monmouth and Middlesex. And there were some community-based programs like Reading Buddies, Operation Sleigh Bells that had been in existence for quite a while, and Representative Peggy. So there were a lot of really grassroots community-based programs there, and I came in at a time where that agency really wanted to raise the bar around technology and some different things. And so we were able to do that together in a relatively short period of time, which was, I think positioning the agency to take the next step and making sure that they had, the foundation in place, and my goal is always, I hope, regardless of what I'm doing, that I leave something better than when I started, and again, goes back to like small incremental changes, and sometimes changes are huge, just huge changes. And sometimes they're little. And I think we did that at FCS, where we made some really important changes. And then, you leave and life goes on, that's, none of us are, irreplaceable, and my hope, as I said, is just that you leave a place better than it was. And I hope I did that.
No, I'm sure you did. I know all the work that you're doing and the example you're setting. But change makers have something in common, right? Obstacles come up, they go around, under, over, through, whatever it takes. Can you talk about an obstacle that you might have faced that you were able to do that, and come out the other side? I think that also helps those who are in that space right now to hear an example of how someone has gone about getting to the other side.
Yeah. So the example, there's so many examples of having to get to the other side. I'm going to give a broader example, Jody, just in terms of,
Sure.
When you have to manage change management, right? So, when you have to do that, and it can really, so in a role like a CEO or a VP or any kind of leader, you aren't always popular because of decisions you have to make. And I think that's a really important getting through, getting around piece. Being uncomfortable and knowing it can be being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's very, very, it's been very critical for me. It's lonely, it can be very lonely and isolating. I always say, and it's not because, decisions you make along the way, sometimes someone has your face on a dartboard somewhere, and that may happen because you made a decision, that someone really kind of, you become the face of that change. And for some, change is very, very uncomfortable. I have always had, and I'm not, maybe it is like this belief that whatever it is, you get through it. But I've always had the belief that this will be uncomfortable. And I know without a doubt that once we get over this discomfort, this phase of like where the change and you're grappling with it, that on the other side, we breathe a sigh of relief together. Like we got through this and oh my gosh, doesn't this feel better now? And sometimes that feeling better now is in 2 weeks. Sometimes it's in 2 years. I mean, you just don't know when you make these changes in an organization. Sometimes they're great short goals, sometimes they're long goals. And so it's the getting around, getting through. I think for me, it's having the faith. You know, how do you do it? I don't think that there's like a prescription, but having some trusted colleagues that you can speak to get through those moments, I think is really important. Because you could get lost in you're sort of a receptacle for a lot of venom at times, you know, negativity. And I always share that at the end of the day, I don't care what letters come after my last name, CEO, whatever it was else, human is there too. I'm a human. So while I am in this leadership role, and I will say, and I've said these things to teams because people forget sometimes, not everyone, some people, that you're a person. And, you know, you may make a certain salary, you may have a certain level of control and power that's perceived, you know, and, but at the end of the day, I'm someone's mom, I'm someone's sister, I'm someone's daughter, I'm someone's friend. You can't just treat me or shoot this venom at me and think there's no impact. I'm not, you know, Iron Man. So I think for me, a level of honesty has been very helpful for me to get through it, to share that vulnerability, like, hey, this is uncomfortable for me too. Coming from a place of clarity, I think really helps. Why are we doing this? Why was this decision made? Informing your team as much as you can about why we're going in this direction. You know, being as transparent as you can. You know, that was a very big theme for me, especially at FCS. It was always a theme for me at the Y. A level of transparency in my leadership to the degree I could be. Accountability, you know, hold me accountable too. But let's do it in a way that's respectful. And that there's humanity at the core of it, you know. I think getting around and getting through and having to challenge the culture of an organization can be very difficult, you know. So you need friends, you need good friends, you need colleagues, and you need faith, you know, in that you're making and the faith comes from making informed decisions. So doing the work to know, you know, to have the rationale as to why you're doing this, the why, the how, and what's on the other side when we get there, you know.
Yeah. You said so many things that I could go with right now because it's just packed in what you just shared. And I appreciate that so much. One is I'm going to say is I'll start with that the transparency that you can share. I don't think that all the time those who work when you're working for a supervisor or whoever it is at that level, they're unable to share a lot of things. There's a lot of confidentiality in those roles. And sometimes you can't be as transparent as you want to be because something is in the mix, but not ready to be released yet. And you're holding on to it and it weighs because I have been in that space, weighs on you because you know that it's going to impact the greater whole of the organization, your team, whatever it is. In the end, though, what happens is a lot of times is there's a lot of this gossip, for lack of a better word, that happens amongst the team. And there's this get on board negativity, right? I think, you know, I think you understand.
I've lived this, so yes.
Yeah, so you understand. But
it.
what doesn't happen, and I don't know why, and I don't know if you have the answer, but if you do, awesome, is that why do we always seem to say that, you know, it's that person's fault? And we all like to jump on the negativity board. It's so much easier to do that. I have my own answer to this, but I would love yours, is that But why is it so much easier to go down that terrible, like, let's all be in this sinking ship together. You understand how upset I am. Yeah, I'm upset too. And we all are upset together, as opposed to finding the one positive that we can all jump on and hang on to each other with. Why do you think that happens?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons, and I think it can vary. I think one can be just culture. It takes some spaces have long-standing culture, and it can take years, depending on how aggressive you are, to shift that. Because a lot of times it's actually the team members. It's just not a good fit for them anymore in that place. Okay. And they're resistant because they've been sort of humming along in their role, doing whatever they've been doing. And now you've brought in, you're the face of bringing in new accountability or new processes that people just don't want to do. I mean, let's be honest. I don't want to do that. Okay. I can appreciate someone not wanting to do things differently. So either you have to make a decision if this is the way it's going to go, to stay or not stay. In the meantime, while you stay, if you choose to stay, ideally, you want to say, can we not perpetuate this negativity? I think that latching on to that, what I've found, that sometimes for people, it feels safer to blame someone else. Then they don't have to be accountable for their own behavior. They don't have to be accountable for the process or their work product or what's the outcomes or their own happiness in their job, right? So you can blame me because you're not happy here, but how is that helping you? And I think it helps because it's then their attention's directed at that person, me, whoever,
right.
And then they don't have to look, he, she, the group, whatever, at their own behavior, their own beliefs, their own choices, their own work ethic or product. It's such a distraction. Blaming becomes a distraction. And, I don't have that you kind of have to put the kibosh on that after a while, pretty quickly, because it's so not productive. It happens behind the scenes, and that's, you can't control that. But I feel that it's oftentimes, it's a lot easier to do that than to look at one's self. I actually don't like that at all. I don't like to blame, if I messed up or I did something, then I'm not an expert at everything. So I would say, or I would just be honest, this really sucks. What you've decided to do really sucks. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate the honesty. I'd rather someone just come out and tell me that, than stir it up in the background. But it happens. It happens.
It does. It does.
Yeah, I think what's your take on that?
So I agree with you. Like, I've always been the type that I want to hear why you think something's not going to work, so that I can absolutely share with you why we're going in this direction, whether you agree or not. At that point, it's like, I'm more than willing to listen, and we may be able to take tidbits of what your thought process is, because I'm all about that, bringing in new thoughts. But if you're in a national, I'll go with a national organization, there's at some point that you, as this supervisor or this, wherever you stand, can't make that total decision. It's being driven from a whole other space.
Right.
You're just the messenger.
That's right. Right.
You are literally
the messenger. Right.
Right. And I've been in this place as a vice president of development, and I've been in that messenger, and then you are the bad guy or whatever. And at that point, you know what I mean? My take is that there is this feeling of camaraderie that, we are in this together miserably, but they stay. And like you said, it is a great way. It is a total great way to feel that camaraderie with other people. Right. But there's this, I don't know why, there's this incredible connection in negativity, as opposed to positivity. And I almost feel like, and the only thing I can say is I almost feel like people think positivity is fleeting.
Mm.
And negativity is just something more common. And it's from what I don't know why that's true, but every time, have you ever heard of everybody saying, oh yeah, everything's going great, but I know the other shoe is going to drop.
Oh gosh. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Of course. Right. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, but that's not everywhere. And I think
Yeah.
it is about different leaders and the way they lead.
Yeah. And I think I think that giving that voice and then moving on from it, as a leader, you kind of, it's there, and you kind of have to shift your focus somewhere. Like if you thought about that every day, you would never get any work done.
No.
And ultimately you hope that, that if someone's really unhappy, they find somewhere else to work. If, sort of the parameters have been set, this is the organization, and you wish them well, it's not personal. It isn't personal. And change is part of organizational life. And then you have these pockets of, incredibly on board, getting on the train of progress and just doing it and standing side by side to get the work done. And thank God for that, because otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. Any success has been about the team, anything that I've been able to say, "Ooh, we did that," is because of the teams that I've been a part of, and thank God.
Yeah, there's so much to be said for servant leaders and those like starting Changemakers, reading the book from our keynote speaker that's happening at our March 24th event really is incredible when you think about the way change makers in general, and every day everybody has the opportunity to be a change maker. And so whatever your role is, from janitor to CEO, you are and can be a change maker.
100%.
Specific role. That is, you are the CEO of that role. But we
That's
don't
right.
look at it that way, right? Because there's things that we can't always make the decisions on.
Pam 10 is a leader in IT enterprise solutions and staffing. They are driven to transform their clients' business performances. They do this every day by providing their clients with the best services and products like BizLego, an online community platform, and Colleens, a unique learning management system. They also transform the lives of women and children through their associated nonprofits, SheTech, which supports women in and joining the technology field, and Softkin, support organization for kids in need. Pam 10, technology for social good. Go to pam10.com for more information.
Before we get too deep into this, there's one other thing I want to talk about in this and that is imposter syndrome that I know a lot of people do face, right? So then there's those who want to go out and be and do and become, whether it's starting a business or like yourself, going out on your own after being for a bigger organization and knowing, what your salary is going to be every week and all of that. There are people who want to do what you did, but don't feel like they can. And then there are those, I don't know, over 900,000 people who resigned in the state of New Jersey in a short amount of time. There was some research recently done. So for those, though, who haven't, and some of those people may have imposter syndrome of where to go next. So what do you say to them, and how do you keep the saboteur out of your internal conversation?
Yeah, I have to have those conversations, not so much imposter, because I feel pretty grounded in terms, of what I think there's always more that's possible, what I can bring to the table. And I'm like exploring that. But in terms of this idea of, what I understand about imposter syndrome, the way I see it is, am I deserving of this? Can I do this? So that to me is very connected to self-worth, like value, how I
absolutely.
value, and then this sense of vulnerability that again exists when we do this. So, I think you have to separate facts from feelings when you're in these places, that's a huge piece. You can get very quickly sucked into the feeling part of, oh my gosh, I should never have done this. Why am I doing this? I don't have what it takes. I'm not, a lot of times it's like good enough, or, and then when you don't feel good enough, and then you don't believe in yourself in terms of like having the skill set to get it done, then you can withdraw and then begin to sabotage by not, that withdrawing, I think, can be really destructive. Again, I think it comes, I really believe, and I have to do this, we all have to have these conversations with ourselves. Like,
Yes.
okay, you're having this is more of worry than it is of reality. Okay. What steps did you take today? And I think taking inventory, like writing it down,
Yes.
write down what you've done, what you're bringing. Like if you have to review that on a regular basis to keep your head in the game and to stay clear, because that feeling train will just, go off on its own. The fear, the not good enough, the, having a sense of like, I'm really not this smart, or I'm really not this effective, or I really don't have what it takes to drive this program or to do this project. When you have to remind yourself, how did I get here? Someone believed in you. You had, you've done something right. So taking that inventory is really important, and really distinguishing, between the facts and your feelings, because the feelings can be very overwhelming, when we're in that place. And I think they can overtake that process, and you lose clarity about who you are and why you're here, But that's when having good colleagues and good friends and, people who can kind of, sometimes we do need to talk to somebody, even a clinician, like if that's a thing for you, getting help, making sure you're staying clear, getting a coach, something, so that you keep your head in the game.
I love that. And I think that that's something I just to take it one step further, making a list, what you exactly said, writing it down. And when you write it down, which list does it fall into, feeling or fact? Be very clear as which side of the page that it goes. I'm not good enough because, is that a fact or is that a feeling?
Right.
And ask your, a colleague or someone else, what would they say about you? Start thinking outside of yourself. I think it's really important, because we get so caught up on how we view ourselves. We don't always see ourselves through somebody else's eyes and the strengths that they see about us. I know that happens to all of us. We don't always see our own strengths. People will call us out on our weaknesses easily, but we don't always see our own strengths, and people will also give us those compliments. So remember them, and sometimes maybe even write them down, because that will help you to remember when you're doing this fact or feeling piece as well.
Yeah, I think it's important.
So, you mentioned if you need if you need a therapist or a coach, tell us about you're in your own practice, not starting, you've been in your own practice for the most part to begin with. Whole Heart Healing is a beautiful name.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. And so tell us about this and where people can find you.
Sure. Thank you. I'm returned to practice, which I feel really excited about. I'm excited to be back in that part of the work. And I'm here in Bucks County in Doylestown. And right now you can reach me, through the practice phone number, which I'll share if it's okay with you, Jody. It's 267-810-2782. And then my email is wholeheart, WHOLE heart 2021@gmail.com. So I don't have a website right now. I'm really just doing things through, obviously through phone referrals. I'm listed on Psychology Today as well. There's a profile there. And it's just, my hope is to also do some community work through my role as well. So I've connected here with the county in different ways. I have some things in the mix, which is exciting. Some stuff that I was a part of, in New Jersey, and have kind of wanted to bridge that here. But I'm being really intentional this time around and clear about my time, my commitment, and why I want to get involved. So I'm doing it a little bit differently. And I'm not an employee of anyone right now. So it's, except for myself. And so I need to be really clear about, parameters and boundaries, everything we were talking about earlier. And I'm excited. I feel really good about what's next. I have to remember patience with the process, and with myself, and it feels so right to be in this place as far as, back to practice and connecting with people in a new way with a little bit more freedom is it's inspiring. It's exciting,
It sounds beautiful, and you could totally just in your face see
Oh,
connected you are
thank you.
to it. And that's something that everybody should feel. I mean, we spend most of our days in roles. If you're working, whether you're working for yourself or someone else, no matter what the work is,
Mhm.
connection to it, so important. And you don't have to stay in a
Right.
place where you're not happy.
Right.
There are other roles, it's just taking steps to get to them, because not everybody can leave without
That's
something.
right. That's right. And we have to assess sometimes, duty calls. We have to get some things done. We have obligations, financial, we have things we have to take care of. So sometimes something is a stepping stone or a bridge, or, I wouldn't be able to say I'm here right now without every single piece of the process that I've been through. Every role I've had has been the next step to get to where I am, and, I go back to, for me, what really just came up so strongly, and you had mentioned during my bio, was that, you don't get a do-over. And that just kept ringing in my head, after I lost my mom. And like, this is it, like, you don't get to do this again. You get one shot at this life here. And, what can I do with the support of my family, thank God, to connect to that heart-centered place and really make the next right decision for me, and my family. So I'm just so thankful every day. That's a big theme, for me in my life, is gratitude. 100% every day.
Same, every day. It's so vitally important.
Oh yeah.
Because like you said, you don't get a do-over. So be grateful for the things that you have and work with things you want.
That's right. That's
And
right.
that way you can make, connection to me in every part of your life is vitally important. And
Yes.
though you don't get a do-over, I think that's such a fabulous, just a fabulous thing to live by.
Yeah.
And you wake up, is remind yourself that day, because I say today is the day, is that, you don't get a do-over for today. As much as we all wish we could. So what are you going to do today that's going to make that difference? So it's beautiful. I could talk to you for like hours. I didn't
Same here.
everything. So I want to have you back, because there's other things I want to talk to you about and have you share about, because I think, you've got so many specialties and the things that people need to hear about. So we'll definitely have you back on, but I want to ask you the last question I ask everybody on the podcast.
Okay.
Okay. So, what is the footprint that you are creating right now that you want to leave behind?
So does this make other people cry when you ask this question? I don't know. It
can get emotional, but the
yeah.
of it means that you're really connected to it.
Yeah. The footprint, and the whole concept of do-over, if today was it, right? So if tomorrow wasn't here, the footprint I hope that I'm creating is one being a mom, that's, if you know me, that's sort of who I am first. And in that people who've crossed my path and been part of my journey have felt supported and loved and held up, beside me, that there's a sense of truth that hopefully I bring to my connections and authenticity, and that the truth is, if you know me, you know who I am, and that there's no games being played here. So I think for me, the footprint that I want to leave, if I were to kind of look at it holistically, is about sharing the space with the people in my life centered on love and truth, unconditional love, honesty, and safety, and that just should transcend not just in my personal life, but hopefully in my professional circle as well. So those are the themes, and that I've hopefully been a part of the process to impact those that have been served through the agencies that I've been a part of as well. There's been tens of thousands of people that hopefully we've served and that I have supported that work. And so that means something to me as well. So it is about change and supporting that change. And hopefully people are changed by being, and I'm changed by them as well, as creating this circle of safety and unconditional love and truth,
Absolutely. We don't even realize, I think, the impact that we have on each other. It can be a passing conversation, yet you remember a word or a phrase that person said, and you may never let them know the impact that phrase had or has in your life, but you've impacted intentionally, right? Because the work that you do is intentional. So knowing that every time you walk away from a situation in a therapy session or whatnot, that person, even though they may never say it to you, still remembers that conversation. And that may be how they get through their week. And they may never do that,
Right.
That's the one thing. Therapy is a gift for those who do it the right way and have that incredible impact and are willing to be that giving, unconditional person. That gift was bestowed upon those therapists. I really truly believe that. And they're able to share that gift with the person sitting across the table or the Zoom screen, depends on it now. So, I applaud you, your unconditional love and your wonderful messages today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has just been such an honor to be a part of the process and, being part of today with you, Jody, but also being part of the summit that's coming up. And, I'm just excited to be a part of these conversations. I feel, really blessed that you included me in the process.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for being a change maker. That's what it's really all about. It's I'm the conduit, but it's the incredible humans that are doing the work along with me that makes the difference. So I appreciate you. So Colleen, thank you so much. Everybody, again, that phone number real quick and the email.
It's 267-810-2782. And then my email is wholeheart, WHOLE heart 2021 @gmail.com.
Awesome. Congratulations on the
Thank you.
Practice. We wish you well. We'll have you back because we have other topics to talk to you about.
Wonderful. Anytime.
Thank you so much. And
thank you, Jody.
You're welcome. I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what small or large step are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goal? Have a fabulous week, everyone. Bye.